guys. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can. I'm actually doing this on my phone instead of on my computer because I think my computer video is just, my camera's a little bit messed up. So hopefully I can see when you guys are asking any questions or anything. I'm gonna pull this chat up here just so I can see. If not, what I'm going to do is to actually try to work this out and pull up myself on here. Okay. 1 second. Okay, I see Leah is watching, so that's good. Hey, Leah. All right, so it doesn't help to look at myself on my screen right here behind me and then look at myself here too. So I will just look at myself here. And since it is 12:01 on Eastern time, I will go ahead and get started. My name is Tamara Melton. I am the co-founder of Diversify Dietetics, and I'm actually based in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, good. Can you hear me too? Okay. Hopefully, let me know if you can hear me too. It's great that you can see me. But I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm really excited to be on today to be telling you guys more about the nonprofit that I co-founded with my co-founder, Deanna Bellany, and we co-founded a nonprofit called Diversify Dietetics. And you may have heard of Diversify Dietetics from around just kind of the internets, but we are a nonprofit that is dedicated to empowering students, professionals, and interns of color who are interested in joining the dietetics and nutrition profession. And the idea of Diversify Dietetics came out of kind of some questions and frustrations I know that I personally had, and I think other RDs and students may have had as well. For myself personally, I actually had the idea to come out of a conversation that I had at our FNC in Chicago a couple of years ago with a couple of the other dietitians. And we were talking about how there wasn't a lot of people of color in dietetics. It's very obvious if you go to any nutrition conference that there are not enough people of color in our profession. But the dietitian who I was talking to, actually Rebecca Scritchfield, who's a good friend, and actually in our advisory council for our nonprofit, she and I just first met, and we were talking about how there weren't enough professionals of color. But I said to her, you know, I think one thing that people miss is that there's just not enough students of color who are able to continue in complete our whole educational pathway. And that's a huge disconnect that seems to happen. A lot of people are like, oh, we just need more diversity, but then they don't really think about how challenging it can be for students to actually come through and successfully complete what is a pretty challenging pathway. If you look at other pathways for allied health professions, a lot of times they include, they'll include what we call our internship, that supervised practice portion within their undergraduate or their graduate level programs. They don't have the whole matching process they might be working through and things like that. So we talked about it, and I thought, you know, there's really no one organization out there, or really no one really thinking about resources specifically to students of color and professionals of color. And wouldn't it be great to have a nonprofit that really just focused in on that? And just so happened that my co-founder, Deanna Bellany, who was out in Houston at the time, was thinking the same thing. And we were connected through the power of Instagram. If you know the ladies at Food Heaven Made Easy, Wendy Lopez and Jessica Jones, and they had connected with Deanna Bellany, my co-founder, through Instagram. And she and I connected, and we had a very similar idea. What if we created an organization that would provide resources to students of color and to professionals of color once they're practicing, to help them to get over any of a number of barriers that could arise that would cause them to not be able to successfully complete the educational pathway. And so, hey Maggie, hi. And so we said, let's just do this. Let's get it together, and let's create an actual organization that is focused on this. And one thing that was cool about meeting Deanna is that she actually knew of a reference organization that I was personally thinking of. both of our husbands work in the business community, and that's kind of their profession. And they both were very familiar with an organization called Management Leadership for Tomorrow. And if you look them up, it's ml4t.org. And Management Leadership for Tomorrow's focus is to help students of color in the business community. And it gives them resources like coaching and mentoring while they're in school, helping them to get into MBA programs and graduate programs, and then mid-level career programs and things like that. And so we thought that's what we want to have for nutrition. That's exactly what we want to do. So I always tell people about the organization because it really helps them to see what exactly our goal is and what we're trying to do. One question that we get quite a bit, people say, like, are you trying to compete with other professional organizations, namely the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics? And the answer is no. What we're trying to do is complement resources that are already out there. We think that there are some things that we, being women of color, and people who've come through the dietetics pathway and who know what it's like, we can create some things that maybe aren't able to be created through our other professional organizations that we might have out there. But if you go onto our website, diversifydietetics.org, you'll see a lot of resources that we're sharing that are either from the Academy themselves or some of the practice groups or even some of the MIGs. We work with a lot of those different groups too, and really help to amplify their efforts. Keep in mind that it's not a requirement to be an Academy member, especially if you're a student. And a lot of students can't afford to become an Academy member at that point in time. And so they may not even have access to the resources that the Academy is putting out, or they may not see the benefit of being a member at that point because they don't know what's out there. And so our being able to share those resources and resources from other organizations, which has been really cool, has been really helpful. So just a little bit on the stats of diversity in our field. Depending on where you look, if you look at either CDR or you look at Academy membership, we are anywhere between 9 and 11% people who identify as people of color. Where that becomes a challenge is where we're looking at the clients and patients that we serve. Maybe in the United States itself, it's way more than 11% of people. The United States, in just a few short years, will be minority majority, and we just don't have enough people in our profession to represent what we need. And why is that important to actually have people of color there? Instead of teaching all dietitians cultural humility or cultural sensitivity, really, we don't really do humility, we do sensitivity. Because if you don't have somebody at the table who understands like where somebody has come from, you're going to have a knowledge gap. And let's say if you're translating languages. One example that we have, if you go onto our Instagram page from like way back when we first started a year ago, which is not way back when, but it feels like it, was how there was a young lady who's kind of a part of our Diversify Dietetics community, and we always follow everybody who's in our community, and she's Asian, and she was watching a webinar. And so on the webinar, it was breaking down Asians of different areas and where they were from different ethnicities, and really just breaking them down even further, Cambodian, Hmong, and things like that. Who thinks about that? But people who are typically either really, really working with that group or, quite honestly, people who are from those different ethnicities. And that is what, at least for me personally, I've seen as a very large knowledge gap, is that right now it's just like Asians and then Africans and all these different groups that are really, really lumped together, and we don't get into really looking down into subgroups that can be helpful with, I'm sure, medical nutrition therapy when you get to that point, but definitely just in simple working with our clients and patients and telling them, okay, this is the foods that you like to eat, but I really understand what you like to eat and how you like to eat it and what your particular interests and likes are, what's really important to you, and things like that. And that's what we don't have right now in our profession. I know for me personally, I'm here in Atlanta, and this is where I did my dietetic internship and where I got my first job. And I will have to tell you a couple of the places that I walked into when I was even a student, an intern, and then as a professional. I mean, there's a lot of Black people who live in Atlanta. If you've come here before, it's a lot of us who are here in Atlanta. And some of the places I went to, like senior centers and things like that, I was the first Black dietitian that they had seen in like 20, 30 years. And they were so excited to see me. You would have thought I was their granddaughter or something. They just were so excited to see somebody who looked like them and who could identify with them. That's just something that's real and is really important to our clients and patients. It makes sense. People are comfortable with people who they feel understand them better. And there's actually research that shows that practitioners who work with their own race or ethnicity actually provide better care. And you can find a lot of that research on our website as well. And so that's our goal. Our goal is to say, okay, we want to make sure we're diversifying this profession so that we are able to provide better care to our clients and patients that we face so that we can stay relevant. We know that dietetics profession is facing a lot of challenges with other people who are coming into our space. And I'll tell you one thing, here in Atlanta, I've definitely seen that if there is a Black person who is putting out something related to food and nutrition, people don't care about the letters after their name. They care about what they have that is something that they can relate to. So you asked, Build Up's asking a question, any resources from the Academy that for individuals of color? Be a little bit more specific as to that because I can tell you about the MIGs that they have. So there's different members interest groups that are very specific to different ethnic groups. So I should say racial groups. There's a NOBIDON, which is a National Organization of Blacks in Nutrition and Dietetics. And there's LIADON as well, which is for Latin and Hispanics. We also have the Asian and Pacific Islanders group. And then you also have, I feel like I'm missing another group, but I think those are the three main members interest groups that you have. And so they're doing great work. There's awesome people in those groups. There's also the Diversity Committee. The Diversity Committee is a board appointed committee that does create resources related to increasing diversity in dietetics and within the Academy itself, because that's really their focus as well. And then there are some other resources that you might have that are related to various different groups in dietetics. So unless that's not what you're asking, that's kind of the resources that are out there. Other than that, they're quite general resources. There's definitely been some research that's come through the Academy's journal that speaks about different challenges that students of color may have working with in dietetics, trying to get through the educational pathway. But to date, that's kind of been general. There's more research that's coming out. Dr. Kate Burt, who's up in New York, in the Bronx at Lehman College, actually just published a paper recently, within the last 6 months or so, where she looked more closely at some other barriers that might come up. But the interesting thing about that is there's research and there's anecdotal, and we definitely need more data. But even just if you look at, and I urge people, if you are on Instagram or even our Facebook page, to just go over there and see what the comments are that people are saying, students and interns. You can see what the challenges are that they are facing. Sometimes it's just lack of information, which is why, again, we wanted to create something that would be external from the Academy if students are not able to afford that, or if somebody chooses not to be a member. That way we can help them to see, like, here's the resources that are there. Should you choose to become a member, they have some great resources. They're doing really good work there that are over there. But even if you're not, we want you to still be a member of this profession. So our goal is to give resources to students and help them and professionals, interns. So if you go onto what we're doing, I have little notes here on our website, you can see a lot of the resources that we have. We chose to become a nonprofit so that we'd have access to be able to do more with funding. And so that is why we're all volunteer supported. I'm a volunteer. Deanna's a volunteer. We both have full-time jobs and families on top of this as well. And so we definitely would not be where we're at without all of the different volunteers all around the country and actually around the world who help us to do all the different things that we do for our organization. And the great thing about what we've done is we've kind of just created a space. That's why you'll hear us call our organization a community, because there was never really one community where people of color could go. It was broken up by Blacks, right? Or Latin and Hispanic. And that's an interesting group that have separated because there's a lot of Afro-Latinos. There's a whole group of people from Brazil or Honduras or from wherever who are Afro-Latino, many of them here in the United States. And so it's like, to break up groups like that, that's just one example, is where people are having to kind of choose where they're from. And that's really difficult for them to do. So we have this kind of community, and it's really great to see the connections that people are able to make. They like talk to each other, post things with each other. We have some Facebook groups that have been created. They are closed Facebook groups that people can speak freely without feeling like they have to explain themselves about certain things. But quite honestly, if you go in there, you see them really sharing with each other, like, hey, you know, does anybody have help for this kind of textbook that I could get at a lower rate? Or somebody might post on there like, hey, there's a job that's coming up in this area, and post it up there, and really helping each other out. So it's one of the favorite things I like to see about our community, is the community that is coming on. The other things that we do is, we were heavily when we first started about a year ago and we launched, is we went straight to Instagram. Why? Because that's where young people tend to be at. And it's the way to reach a lot of people at once, and to really kind of reduce that barrier of access. And so you'll see us over there. We've got about 3,500 followers-ish. That kind of fluctuates. And that's where we actually put out a lot of our information and push it over to Facebook as well. And then we launched last year a mentor program. And our mentor program is really exciting because one thing that students were coming back and saying is like, look, I want to have a mentor who can help me, but there's nobody in this area where I live. Or I want somebody who can understand where I'm coming from, or who looks like me or something. And so we created a virtual mentor program. What we really did is we were just a conduit to say, here's the student or young professional maybe who wants to have a mentor. Here's their characteristics, and then match them up with somebody else. And so, like for instance, my mentor, she actually lives all the way out in LA. I think Deanna's mentor is in Houston. We're all over the place, and so that's great. We've kind of reduced that barrier of just finding somebody and accessing them with our mentorship program. And then we also launched a podcast earlier this year. So we had a lot of topics that we wanted to cover. One of the things that students and professionals were coming back and saying, we did a lot of surveying, was that they just needed resources. Some people, and I'm not calling out any dietetic internships or programs, but some people were going through programs and had no idea about, one, the internship matching process. They didn't know, or they didn't feel comfortable asking their professors about help with challenging courses. People didn't know how they wanted to be able to find jobs, or were struggling with different things. How do I get my natural hair ready in a professional way? I mean, these are questions that you may not be able to ask your professors and things like that. So we launched our podcast so that we could bring on professionals. And so we have educators and professionals who've come on to talk about different topics. And so we've had our main podcast, which is focused in on topics that are related to students and interns who are going through their programs. But then we also have what are called snacks episodes, where we talk to professionals who are in private practice or who are in sports nutrition or things like that. And so we have those other topics as well. So we're always open to topic ideas. Students will ask us for different topics, or members in our community will say, hey, I'm really interested in blah, blah, blah. So we'll say, yeah, we know somebody who does that. And so we'll ask them to come onto the podcast and be interviewed there. And then our meetups are really fun. We actually have another round of meetups coming up. And so our meetups, what they basically are meetups. It's really very simple. What we wanted to do was to create a space where, I will say as a person of color, pretty much any major dietetics event that I go to, I'm probably one of, there's probably more because I'm in Atlanta, probably one of just 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people of color. And after a while, you're like, I really wish I was around just more people of color who are in the dietetics profession. And so we wanted to create events that were more than that, that would be very different in that when you walk in there, you're like, okay, these are the people that I can really relate to, I feel really comfortable with, and I want to really connect with them. And so we did a round of meetups. We did back to school meetups back in August and September, all around the country. I think we did it in 12 different cities. That was great because I came to Deanna and I said, Deanna, I know this is crazy, but I really want us to do these meetups all around the country. We're just going to ask the community if they're willing to host a meetup in their city. I'll do one in Atlanta. She was in Houston at the time. and let's see if they can do that. And they did. They came out, and it was great. It was so great to see all the pictures coming in on all the posts and everybody connecting. And they're just chill meetups where we just got together. I mean, in Atlanta, I thought I knew every RD of color here, but I didn't. And so the great thing was people connected and saw us and came out, and we got to meet each other and just be comfortable. I think that's really the part that people like the most. We had a very large meetup at Fancy, and I have to say I've not been to any event in the 11, 12 years I've been a dietitian that was anything like our event that we had at Fancy. And we heard people say that over and over again who were there, because we were just comfortable. I mean, we were able to play our music that we're comfortable with, have conversations we're comfortable with. It was just really nice to have. And so that's our next round of meetups that we're going to be having again this month and next month. I think in about 20 different cities now, and even some out of the country. And this is just people raising their hand and saying, hey, we want to have a meetup in our area. I'm willing to host it. And then we help to organize and to promote them. And so that's probably one of our biggest kind of draws, I think. I think it is, but it might be, something else as well that people are really interested in. And so I'm going to answer you guys' questions here. See what you asked. Jane asked, how can I best support and amplify your message? So different ways to support us is to, first thing I tell people to do is if you happen to meet upon or come upon a student of color who doesn't know about Diversify Dietetics, they might be interested in, or a professional, if you can let them know about the organization. That's one of the things that people tell us they do quite a bit. It just gets them in the community and connected. And so that is really helpful for them as well. Other thing you can do is donate. We are all volunteer organization, and everything that we do, we try to create resources for students that are free or very low cost. Like for instance, for our meetups, we do charge a small fee, but that's just to help to cover our administrative costs, because everything else that we have, our website, our podcast, the platforms that we use to put on webinars when we have those every now and then, things that we do to plan events that are coming up, t-shirts that we give out, or giveaways or anything like that, is things that we have to have through donation. So that is really helpful to have as well. And then if you're interested in being a mentor, you can sign up to be a mentor as well. You can find that out on our website. And then sometimes we do a call out, like we want to do a podcast and we might need to bring somebody in who has expertise in a certain area. So as we start to expand our podcast, if you can keep an eye out for that, those kind of requests. If you go onto our website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the homepage, you can sign up for our newsletter so you can see those types of things as well. Also, if you have any jobs, honestly, wherever you are, that are available, internships, if you're willing to precept, if you know of scholarships, anything like that, we just like to get the message out so you can definitely share with us, and we'll share it on our platform, and it just reaches more people. So the one cool thing I love is that there are a few dietitians out there who just think about us when there's a job that comes up in their area, and they just send it over, shoot us an email, and they say, hey, Tamara, Deanna, this is something that's coming up, or a scholarship or a fellowship or whatever it is, and we share it. Because one of the things that happens for students of color is that they disproportionately are working more. They're just busier. And so they don't have time sometimes to be volunteering or searching for jobs or things like that. And they just need somebody to help them to get the information. And so that's sometimes what we're doing as well. Other questions. So thank you for that question, Jane. We appreciate any support that you can give us. Ellen asked, how do we get involved? I think I answered that. You said you're a preceptor and would like to help. But I do like A&D. I like A&D too. They do great work. I've been a past Academy spokesperson. I'm currently on the Nutrition Informatics Committee, so I'm very involved with the Academy as well. So I think I just answered that kind of the way that I mentioned it before, that if you could help support us that way. And Leah let us know that next week, nutritionjobs.com is going to be on next week, and later in the month they're doing a Facebook Live. I'm prepping for the RD exam, so we'll share that definitely from Build Up Dietitians about those things on our network, on our Instagram and our Facebook, and in our newsletter if we get it before we push it out in the email. So one other way that a couple of people have helped, and I will give a shout out to Alyssa Rumsey and Heather Kaplan. Both of those ladies have done something that I thought was very interesting and supporting, in that they have on their own, they provide workshops Alyssa does entrepreneur summits for registered dietitians, and Heather just did a WIND workshop working on kind of weight inclusiveness workshop that she had. What they did is they set aside a scholarship for somebody of the Diversified Dietetics community. So what they said was, we want to make sure there's somebody in the room of color. We want to reduce the barrier of cost, and because we know that's one of the issues that may come up for access, and put out a simple application and helped us to promote it, or asked us to promote it. And I think that's just a really unique way of putting your money where your mouth is, that if you really want to support people, sometimes you have to say, I'm going to really put something out there. So those two ladies, thank you so much. And Alyssa also serves on our advisory council as well. So that's just kind of a unique way of providing resources as well. If you guys are interested in any more information, please visit our website, diversifydietetics.org. You can find us on Instagram at Diversify Dietetics, and on Facebook at Diversify Dietetics. We are on Twitter, but we don't tweet that much, so I would follow us on Instagram if you are interested. If you need to reach me, I am Tamara, Tamara, at diversifydietetics.org. Thank you so much, Leah, for this opportunity and Build Up Dietitians. We really appreciate it. I know the great thing about Facebook Lives that this can sit out there. So I'll come back every now and then and check in and see if anybody has any questions. And thank you all for any support that you can give. If you're already following us, thank you for being a part of the Diversified Dietetics community.